And the Washington County Quorum Court is now called into session. Good evening. Again, welcome and Happy New Year to our citizens in Washington County. And again, thanks to our elected officials, countywide elected officials who walked through our county state of the address. We will go ahead and get started. J.P. Madison, will you lead us in our prayer and pledge?
Thank you, Mr. Judge. I have a longtime friend, Paul Warren, here. He is the Director of Church Operations for St. Joseph's, and he's going to lead us in prayer.
Thank you.
Paul.
Let us pray. Lord, may we, the good people in this courtroom and throughout this county, be blessed by reflecting on the words of your servant, Francis of Assisi, who throughout his life proved that each one of us, by our intentional choice, may become instruments of your peace when we find hatred and we choose to instead sow love, when we are injured or injure others and seek reconciliation, when we find doubt and uncertainty and spread belief, when we find despair and we bring hope, when we find darkness and we provide light, and when there is sadness and we share joy. O Divine Master, grant that we seek not so much to be consoled ourselves as to console others, to be understood as to understand those with whom we disagree, to be loved as to love especially those we would rather despise. And in the end, let us be aware that in giving, we receive. In forgiving, we are forgiven. And in dying to our selfishness, we are born to eternal life. We pray all this in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we do have the JPs would have an updated agenda. There's some in the back on the podium. They have color in it. They're colored. They have color in it. SISM and did we get some? You guys got it? Okay. So adoption. Any additions or deletions on the agenda? JP Yanez. Oh. J.P. Deacons, I'm sorry.
Yes, Judge, thank you. I would like to add an ordinance amending the Washington County Code Section 2-33. I believe it was just handed out. It will replace the ordinance that was previously in our packet to do the same. Instead of an ordinance, it needs to amend the county code.
Okay, so we have one addition of, and that's been passed out to everyone?
Yes, Judge.
Number 17.
What number is that one?
17.
Number 17. You put number 17 on your. Let's see what that one is. Let's see the title of it. What's the title of it, J.P. Deacons?
An ordinance amending Washington County Code Section 2-33.
Okay, gotcha. Any other additions or deletions?
Yes.
J.P. Pine?
We have, I believe you have it numbered, item number 4, the appropriation ordinance, recognizing the appropriation from the jail budget to vehicles for the jail.
Where's that one?
It's in your handout.
It's
handed out on paper.
Okay, it's item number, well, it doesn't have an item number on it. Well, it says item number 4 on the top,
No,
19-I-004.
19-1-004.
All the JP see that? On the very top left-hand corner, it says item 19-I-004. And that was add, you want to add that in?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
That'll be item number 18. JP Madison.
Does that conclude the additions?
Oh, I thought you had one.
Oh, no.
Any additional deletions or additions? Eki?
Just point of clarification, if I could please, Judge. Rather than having it 17 and 18, perhaps we need to move 14, 15, and 16? Okay, hold on. I've got too many updates here. My little system's just too slow right now. So I apologize. Let me get this in. I don't have it. Nope. Nope. All right,
You good?
I'm good. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
JP Madison?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Judge. Let me first comment on all the numerous changes to the agenda, other than what Ms. Patty had emailed to us earlier. It does disturb me that there's something of a little lack of notice to the public about some of the items on our agenda tonight, but let me go ahead and move adoption of the agenda with all these amendments.
It's been moved to accept the agenda as adopted with the change, the added additions of 17 and 18. JP Lemming? All right, it's been moved and properly second. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The motion to adopt the agenda as amended, adding item number 17 and 18 has been approved. Preliminary motions. Preliminary motions, JP Madison.
I move that we suspend the rules and read ordinances by title only tonight.
There's been a motion to move, suspend the rules and read by title only.
Second.
Seconded, JP
Jenkins.
Jenkins. All in favor? Those opposed? And the motion passes to pass the preliminary read by, suspend the rules to read by title only. Citizen comments. Citizen comments, opportunity for our citizens to come and visit with us, share what they're seeing going on in the county. Come forward, state your name and your business.
My name's Josh Smith. And this is about a tow and impound yard that I built in the southern end of Washington County. And I've been before turned my stuff into the planning commission, and Nathan Crouch today threw it out, said it wasn't complete. And I don't really understand what I've done that's not complete. Me and him had an argument at my facility. It got heated. He ain't liked me ever since. He told me that he could make me tear my impound fence down that I built. I wasn't aware that I had to have a CUP to do this. Told me that the county had plenty of money to fight my attorneys with on his behalf. And ever since, it's just been a fight. State police come to me back in the summer because the car wreck's on 49 at Winslow, and talked to me about putting an impound yard on the exit ramp. So we built one because they was having to wait for McKnight's and American Towing to go to Greenland and to West Fork to drop their cars off. We built this to help them, and so that's what we did. The amount of danger that's on Interstate 49, I don't know if any of you guys have ever been out there when there's car wrecks, but that is a very, very dangerous road. Sunday night, there was a police car from West Fork that was run into, multiple wrecks. We worked till 3:30 in the morning. I have no buildings on my property. It's a simple fenced-in lot. It sets 90 feet off the road. The fire marshal came down, said that my road didn't meet the requirements. So, but in that event, Mr. Crouch had stopped me from working on my impound from building my road to requirements. The fire department chief at Boston Mountain said that they would not pull a fire truck into my facility to try to fight a car fire in that event. That's why that they have 150 to 200 foot of hose on their trucks. They would set right up in the county road because we have to set dump tanks up to draft, to haul water. And I just need to know what I've got to do to get this passed, to get this open. You know, it's a fence. It's not a building. It's a service to the public. There's no towing yards in that area. Rick Jensen with Washington County Sheriff's Department, I told him I was putting it in. He said, you need to get on our rotation because we need somebody in the south end of the county. And I've spent $32,815 to put this in. Fire marshal come and shut me down. I talked back to him. He said, draw me a site plan. I said, okay. And then I got to reading on that conditional use permit, and you can't get a conditional use permit unless you have an address. Well, in end of October, I filed for an address. I've got the emails, and the county denied me an address. Why they did that, I don't know. As a firefighter, first responder, we respond on addresses, not parcel numbers. I've got a little girl that's sick. Somebody gets hurt on my place, I can't get anybody out there to help them. I can't buy insurance to protect my property without a 911 address. There's a beer store that I own property 10 feet behind. Somebody goes out that building, they fall, it's on me. That's not right. Yes.
Your time has already expired, but I wanted to hear that. Go ahead, J.P. Pine.
Move to suspend the rules and allow the discussion to continue.
You heard the motion to suspend, to let him continue?
And I do have questions for this individual when he's through.
Let me make sure I got this. So got a motion to suspend the rules, allow the public comment to continue on this one. A second by J.P. Lemming. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay. Go ahead, continue, Mr. Smith.
I've heard that it was telltale that I didn't have my permits and insurance to operate my towing company. I do have all that in place. I've got Arkansas State Business License. I come to the county. I bought a DBA. I've got all that. You can't tow for state police unless you have that. But back to the insurance deal, I can't even be protected as a citizen without a 911 address to insure my property. You know, and it's just, I don't see what the big fire hazard is. I spoke with the state fire marshal today from Little Rock, and he said if your fire chief will give you a letter stating that he'll go in there and fight a fire in the event with the road that you have, then that's perfectly fine. And I don't know what else to do, where to turn. I feel like that Nathan Crouch has it out for me. And, you know, the county attorney, he sent me a letter shutting me down. He copied the Arkansas Towing and Recovery Board on that letter. And I called Mr. Rogers at the Towing and Recovery Board, and I spoke with him. And he don't have no jurisdiction over that. He said, you've bought your permits from us. You've got your insurance in place. You've got all your on-hook coverages. You've got everything. That's out of my league. And I just don't see why that they want to stop something going in for the public, and me as a firefighter, take me out of the towing end of things, you know, or even a citizen. If my little girl and wife is driving down the highway and they have a car wreck, and you've got to stabilize the car to do extrication, do you want to wait for somebody to come out of West Fork or Greenland, or would you rather have somebody right there? Because I'm going to tell you, it's not minutes to that, it's seconds that count. But I don't know what I need to do to get this open and get it approved through the county, and that's why I'm here tonight.
J.P. Pine?
Do you, before you tow vehicles to this facility, do you remove the ground cable from the battery?
Yes, we cut all the battery cables.
Okay, and I want to make a comment that, and this is, we have an excellent staff at the planning office. I'll say that, but also I do want to say we need to, and some of what you've done was, to say, a little out of order, you know, in time. But I do understand and see the need for us to do what we can to work with you if it's at all possible. I don't want to see your facility shut down. As a matter of fact, from some experience in first responding, I do understand your people need to respond to these accidents as soon as possible, get the wreck,
And we do that. I mean,
I understand there is a lot of danger out there where you've got a situation, you've got first responders, you've got all kinds of people there at that accident. That all needs to be cleared up and taken care of. I can see you're trying to help that become a safer, more efficient reality.
I think Mr. Lemming's got tow trucks, and he knows that per state police, they don't necessarily want you driving your tow trucks to car wrecks.
The
They don't
longer,
like that
the
'cause that's
longer
less-
you have traffic backup out there and traffic being redirected, going into another lane, the bigger the chances are somebody gets run over and killed, somebody that's out there trying to help. And that's my thing on this. I don't feel good that you've gotten off on the wrong foot with our planning staff. I'd like to see that cleared up, but I'd also like to see us be able to accommodate this, your situation, and keep that response to accidents, that efficiency going.
You know, back to the deal with me and Nathan on the planning side. If he would have came to me and conducted me like a human being, then we probably could have got along, you know, but you don't go up and talk to people like they're garbage. I had 5 guys that work for me, that works for me every day. They was standing right there. You know, you don't go up and conduct yourself to people that way. And I don't mind to get along with him. I'll get along with him. You know, but I didn't cuss him. I didn't do none of that. I did tell him to get off my place. I did tell him that. But he talked to me like I was a piece of trash.
Understand.
And I think that he used his authority to do that.
Well, I'm not really wanting to go down that road and get into all that situation. We just need to do whatever we can to get this alleviated and still not set some kind of precedent that causes some other developer to do something that's out of line or
Right.
not in order.
And I tried to order the black netting to go around my impound so that you couldn't see it from the road. You can't buy it anywhere. I called Arkansas Fence Supply, Lowe's, Home Depot. Nobody carries it. Got back ordered. I'm waiting on that to come in. It's a 6-foot netting, goes all the way around the impound. You can't see what's in it. They call it a privacy netting. And you can't see through it, you know, and it's just, as far out as that is, I mean, the guy that borders me, which is Charlie Clem, he asked me to build the fence on the property line. He said, don't bother him a bit that it's there. He said, that don't bother me at all. You know, I had the security light and all that put in. Nobody's really complained about it. The people out there haven't. I just went and got a lady's car Sunday. She called uptown, tow companies was expensive, drive all the way to Winslow to get a car to bring back to Farmington. She called me, I towed her car from Winslow to Farmington for $100. You know, and not very many people's gonna do that.
I understand. You know, what's going on, to say a little bit in defense of the planning department. We have situations, I see a need for some kind of temporary something until things can be put in order with your development. But we have situations where people get their foot in the door with a temporary. I don't really believe you're one of them, but then they create a nightmare for a neighborhood. And
Right.
that's where it's very difficult to have something where one size fits all.
Right.
I appreciate you coming in and speaking to us about it.
JP Lemming
Thank
and then JP Madison.
I think he's done everything on the state level. The state has really nothing to do with, the county's got rules and laws that we go by. And basically what you've done, you've got the cart before the horse. And that's where you come into a real problem. And it's hard to back up and start over, but because you've already got all that stuff built, if it's not proper there, you're gonna have to move it. And you're talking about the silt fence, that's a state law, beautification acts. I mean, there's a lot more rules and laws. That's why you gotta go through the planning to do all this. I mean, you could be putting this in and it may look like a salvage yard and the other neighbor don't like it. I mean, it's just a lot of rules and regulations. I do think we probably need to figure out a way to allow him about 30 or 60 days to come to conclusions and meet the county needs. And if he can't do that, it's probably gonna have to go away. But I would like to see the court think about giving him 30 or 60 days to get it straightened up.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. And I agree with J.P. Lemming. Please understand that Mr. Crouch's job is to enforce county ordinances. And he found you to be operating a business that was not in compliance. And that puts him in a spot of, frankly, probably needing to shut you down.
Well, the reason
And, well, just hang on a minute here.
Okay.
So, I doubt that he had any personal issues with you. It's his job to do this. And I'm not sure that any of us can waive any of those requirements. So, I strongly suggest that you try to start over again with Mr. Crouch and try to just do whatever he tells you the ordinances require you to do. And I'm not sure you should be operating until you do that, because that's the way we expect people in the county to approach a business. The county is zoned agricultural and single family, and that's it. Any other business uses, and you need to apply before you start spending money. And I understand that things haven't always been that way, perhaps. And this is a new endeavor for you, and you saw a need that you wanted to fix. But, Mr. Judge, I think maybe we might have spent enough time on this.
Mr. Smith, will you visit with Miss Julie before you leave and
You bet.
get her information, get your information? I know you came and visited with me prior to, and we worked through some things, and I haven't seen or heard anything until just now. So I want to make sure you get back on my calendar and come back and visit with me, and we can walk through some more of the details of that.
Okay, that'll
Thank
work.
you. Any other public comments? Thank you, Mr. Smith. Come on.
Very short. I'd like to request before the quorum court votes.
Go ahead, sit down
Oh,
and
I'm
tell us
sorry,
who you are.
Elizabeth Koger, and I live in Fayetteville. I'd like to request before the quorum court votes on the matter of the special election to pay for the jail expansion, that we wait, that we get more information on how, first of all, how they came up with the $30 million figure, exactly why the expansion is needed, and I'd like to see more information out there about how that money is going to be used. Maybe the sheriff could hold some public hearings and, give some information on that. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Colbert. Any other public comments? Any other public comments? Okay. All right, we'll go to the approval of the minutes.
May I?
Go ahead.
A motion
Thank you,
to
JP.
approve the
Again,
minutes.
I also read them, but there is a tiny error if I could. Okay. On page 7 in item 25, it says "be perpetuity," and it needs an N, "be in perpetuity." And with that, I'll second JP Eckes' motion.
All right. Been a motion to approve the minutes with the amended. All in favor? Those opposed? All right, we got the approval of the minutes. Bobby Hill, Treasurer Hill, Treasurer's report.
Hello, everybody. Welcome all new JPs. Look forward to working with each and every one of you. Like I said earlier, please come by if you have any questions about revenue, especially revenue, or finance in general. I'll be glad to help you. Start with this. Well, 7.1 is my first one, but that's December. If you have questions, I'll certainly entertain them, but go ahead and go to 7.2. That's the entire year. See the general fund revenues came under expenditures by almost $1 million, or a little over $1 million. And this is the 9th straight year that revenues haven't been able to keep up with expenditures. That $500,000 will certainly help coming up this year, but as I said earlier, 2021, we got the sales tax issue, but we'll cross that bridge into next budget cycle. But anyway, that has been a continuing problem, but like I said, hopefully the $500,000 will at least balance those out. Down to 2,000, the road fund revenues were just a little bit over expenditures. They ended the year 3.3 million in the bank. Down to 3017, jail revenue 16 million, expenditures 15.7, but 410,000 of that revenue was transfers from the general fund. On the bottom of the next page, we began 2018 37.2 in the bank, ended 37.4, so pretty much we spent everything we brought in. 7.3, 1 cent sales tax. See at the 2018, there we came in 7.6 million. My projection was 7.5. That was over 5% increase, and that totaled $373,000 in growth over prior year. 7.4, quarter-cent jail tax. That brought in $10,463,000 in 2018. That's $500,000 better than 2017. Again, it was over 5% increase. The road half-cent sales tax, it was up even more, 7.6, 116,000 more than the prior year. Ended the year 1.6 million coming from that half-cent tax. That is all I have. I can take any questions.
J.P. Ake.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. Just to point out, it wasn't a quarter, it wasn't a $500,000, it was a $250,000, correct? Or what was the total mill? Was it half?
The $500,000, I think.
Okay. 5/10, okay. I don't know where I was that day. All right, thank you. Just wanted some clarification on that.
Thank you, Treasurer Hill. J.P. Jenkins?
Can you tell us the total we have in reserves at this point, please?
At the end of 2018, what are you talking about reserves? I deal in the whole cash. That 37 million, I said that's at the end of 2018, that's the entire amount of, that's the entire county cash right there.
In reserves for, say, emergency situations, the money that we're not to touch. Unappropriated.
Oh, like in general fund,
The general fund, yeah.
unappropriated reserves on the budget was, I think, 4 million for 2018, but we had probably 8 million that would have been considered reserves in 2018, at the end of 2018.
Any other ones? Thank you, Treasurer Hill. Comptroller's report. Director Worthing?
Uh, 8.1 is the unappropriated reserve balance report that gives a little more detail of what Bobby was talking about. General fund had unappropriated reserve of 5.3 million, and part of that was to cover the jail negative. So overall, about 4 million in reserves, and then overall unappropriated reserves at the end of the year was 9.8 million, but a lot of that is special revenue funds that can only be spent for designated purposes. Then 8.2 is the summary of of expenses. Just kind of as an overview, Bobby deals mostly with the revenue part of things, and I deal more with the expenditures part. So this is the expenditures report. And we ended the year with a few funds that had spent into the negative, and I've listed those out on 8.3, the reasons. And because of in the personal services section and the treasurer's department, they were a little bit negative in their, not through any fault of his own, but, and then at the end of the year, he pays all his expenses out of his commission fund at the end of the year. So that's already been taken care of with court order. Then building and grounds was negative, primarily because they did that renovation on the 5th floor courthouse, and they weren't able to pass their ordinance in November that would have given the funds to cover that and do other things. And then the grants department was a little bit in the negative because we get charged our unemployment claims as they happen, and we don't know what that amount's going to be until March, so we can't budget in advance for it, and that's what caused that budget to be a little bit in the negative. And then unclaimed property, we had a little bit in the negative there because nothing was budgeted because we aren't able to predict when we would have an reclaimed property. And then the circuit court was in the negative, and Judge Taylor submitted a letter explaining why she spent her budget in the negative a little bit. And she had an eye appointment and couldn't be here tonight, so she submitted the letter and said she could come next time to explain it if you had any further questions. And so overall, it just out of 89 budgets and a $70 million budget, just a little bit of overspending is, I think, doing pretty good. And that's all I had. If anybody had any questions.
Thank you, Director Worthing. Our county judge report, in item 9, don't have a few things. We did have our second annual State of the County address, and again, I think, again, well received. Citizens of the county last year sent us a lot of notes afterwards, and so we visit with the elected officials to do it again, and so I think we'll see that same, to allow the county officials to speak to the counties once a year, sharing what they did in the prior year and what some of the goals in the coming year. One of the things, if you listen to everyone, we talked about transparency, shared the overall ranking Washington County being transparent. And again, one of the things I want to continue to work on is to do that. And one of the things our IT department is doing, and it's already out there, we'll get that pushed out. We have to kind of market and advertise it. The sheriff has an app, so people can carry that around. They get access to all kind of records and files. We just created a county app, and it's downloadable on iTunes, and I want to say it's on Android as well. But now you can go ahead and you're traveling around, you have any and all the access to the county that you need. The other piece is we were in the court, had a court case, and we had some comments that everyone doesn't have emails, and that's why we went ahead and made sure that all the JPs would get county emails so that, again, we can keep in contact with the citizens and obviously with the folks in the county employees. So again, I want to encourage everyone to continue to look at these things, and what we can do to continue to speak with and work with our citizens of the county. 2019, I've got some other projects that's going to allow citizens beyond even the app to interface with us in way of like a call or a roll call. Right now, they call in, it gets documented, then we find somebody who's in that area to see, hey, can you check on this road, et cetera. Well, we're trying to come up with some tools that allow the citizen can in real time see where their road may be in transition. Is it a road that's going to be worked on this year or not? Is it already had some maintenance a month ago, so it won't have maintenance in another 3 months? So it's not going into a logging system and waiting for somebody to respond back. It gives them some real time. So that's just some small part of what we're continuing to look at doing that's going to, again, allow the engagement of our citizens of the county as well as us serving the people in the county. So you have your disposal report already in your packet. That should be already in there. And with that, again, given the county address, I don't have any other remarks. We're going to go ahead and move to Matt Durrett. He's still here. Counselor, come on up. Item 10. I did have one other one before you sit down. JP Madison is out. She's out in, I think, California. She's at work, and so just wanted to make sure folks knew. Counselor?
Thank you, Judge. In your packets, 10.1, this is just the end-of-year financial reports for our hot check fee account. This is, for those of you who don't know, in the statute, when individual writes a hot check, there is included in the collection of that is they're to pay the restitution, then it's tacked on a prosecutor fee and a merchant fee. And so the merchant fee obviously goes to the individual to whom the check was written. We get a fee. It's based on a sliding scale depending on the amount of the check to cover the cost of handling these cases. So the statute says that we're supposed to submit to the Quorum Court just for your consideration and for your to keep you informed as to how much was brought in, how much was spent. So everything is laid out in this letter, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions if anyone's got any.
JP Ecke.
Thank you. Would you explain where the, good evening, good to see, where this money goes? It stays in your department,
Yes.
so just explain the process of.
Well, it is we have a separate account, and it is, our office can spend this money as long as it is for some prosecutorial or law enforcement purpose. And so most of the money that's spent from this goes to cell phones. We don't submit a request for cell phones in our budget for our prosecutors. We require our prosecutors to be on call 24 hours a day. And so to do that so that law enforcement officer or anyone can get in touch with them, we provide them cell phones, and obviously it also gives them access to their email at all hours of the day. So that's what this goes to pay for. We don't submit it in our budget. We pay for it out of this account. So that's the main expense out of there. And then there are various other expenses. But
Okay. Any other questions? We receive your report. Thank you very much, Counselor.
Thank you, Judge.
With that, we'll move on. Item 11, JP Ecke.
Yes, thank you, Judge. This is an annual grants housekeeping sweep that from the end of 2018 goes into the 2019 budget. And if you would, Mr. Lester, read it by title only.
An ordinance anticipating carryover in revenues totaling $2,951,358.75 in various funds and appropriating $2,849,760.20 from various funds to various budget items for 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Lester. You'll come to know that grants have different governances, timetables, and uses, and it does not go into county general for unappropriated reserves. There are restrictions on how these grants could be used. And for all the CPAs on the court, you can see that it didn't balance out because some grants allow you to, some of these grants were already budgeted for 2019. So then it rolling over, they can use that if the governances allow them to use it for a project that they are planning on for the next year. So a lot of these are very regulated and restricted. So just for your information, that's what this is. So I make a motion that we pass this ordinance. General
I got a-
housekeeping.
Got a motion by Lisa Ecke, J.P. Ecke on the adoption of the ordinance, acceptance of the ordinance. And a second by J.P. Bowman. Any discussion? J.P. Harbison.
On most federal grants that I know of, especially that schools receive, there was an administrative fee that could be withdrawn to be used for administration of that grant. Do we do that?
I think in our case, we don't because we have a grant administrator. But in some grants, we pay an administrative fee like to the Northwest Arkansas Economic Development Commission, or if someone else is out there working
Okay,
with us,
but
so yes.
we're not keeping that money because we pay our
That's
grant
correct.
administrator
That's correct.
out of the general fund.
Some days she wished that we would because she would be paid more because if the grant money
Because
that
yes.
she brings a lot of grants to
Okay,
us.
well,
No.
I just wanted to check
Yes,
on that.
that's
Thank
good.
you.
So we got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? J.P. Lemming?
Is any of these matching grants?
Some of them are.
Some of them are matching grants, so these are a total number of what we will have, or with the matching grants we gotta put money with?
Just what's left.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
I
just
second
left,
it.
yes. It's already been seconded.
Okay.
Any other discussion? We got a motion and second. Any other discussion? Public comments? Any public comments? Okay, so we have a motion to adopt the ordinance, moved and second, and we'll go with Ms. Patty on the roll call.
Susan Cunningham. Yes. Harvey Bowman. Yes. Judith Yanez. Yes. Patrick Deakins.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan.
Yes.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins.
Yes.
Suki Hires.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Willie Lemming.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Butch Pond.
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Okay, so that motion, the adoption of the ordinance carries and passes. Item 12, that would be J.P. Ecke.
Thank you, Judge. If you would read this, item number 12, Mr. Lester.
An ordinance amending ordinance 2018-59 to correct an omission of a personnel position change in Article 1 and to change the grades of the ADO DFC flex positions.
If the members of the Personnel Committee will remember the second to the last meeting that we had, it was a little lengthy in that the sheriff was changing the pay grade and/or the range of, I think it was like 40 different or 44 different personnel in his sheriff's department. And we went through each one of them, and there was one that was left out on the personnel side, but was included in the appropriation side. So this is just taking care of that oversight and making sure that law enforcement agent gets paid. So I move to adopt item number 12.
Second.
A motion by J.P. Ecke to adopt the ordinance amending the ordinance for the grade change. A second by J.P. Pine. Any discussion? Any discussion? Any public comments? Any public comments? All right, Ms. Patty?
Susan Cunningham. Yes. Harvey Bowman. Yes. Judith Yanez. Yes. Patrick Deacon.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan.
Yes.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins.
Yes.
Suki Hires.
Yes.
Sue Madison. Yes. Willie Lemming.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson.
Okay, that motion is, passes. The ordinance amending the ordinance to allow for the personnel change and regrading. Item 13, J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. I want to go ahead and ask our group to go ahead and move this to a committee for jails. I had a discussion with a number of the law enforcement people recently, and they've really enlightened me about a great deal of issues here. I've also asked the enforcement people, the judge and the prosecutor from Springdale, to come and talk to our group about what they're doing with ankle bracelets. And I think we can get a lot of really great input from these local cities to help us work out the issues here. And I told the judge, the sheriff earlier, that I still like to see more options about what we've got as far as expansion of the jail, other contractors and so forth. So I'm just moving that this be moved to the Committee for Jails as soon as we have that adjusted, and then ask these people to come in and participate in a discussion about this.
Okay, so we have a motion to refer to the Jails Committee.
Yes.
Second by J.P. Harbison. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Thank you, Judge.
All right, that passes. It'll be referred to the Jails Committee. Item 13. Item 14, well, J.P. Dennis is not here, so it was introduced by J.P. Dennis in the last session. Now we have new JPs, so we have the next 3 items have been added to the agenda. And I'll ask the county attorney, the parliamentarian, to read those by title only. Item 14.
An ordinance providing for the levy of a 1/4 of 1% sales and use tax within Washington County, Arkansas, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto.
And what is this? This is on our jail tax. Discussion. J.P. Deacons.
You know, Judge, in light of J.P. Bowman's last comments, I only see it fitting to maybe, I move that we refer this also to the Jails and Law Enforcement Committee.
Okay, so we got a motion to refer item 14, the quarter-cent sales tax, to the Jail Committee, J.P. Deacons and J.P. Hires. Seconded? Was that J.P. or J.P. Jenkins Hire? We all did. Okay, all right. Any other discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Public comments? No public? All right, we'll go ahead and refer that. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so it goes and gets referred to our Jails Committee as well. Item 15, Counselor.
An ordinance calling a special election in Washington County, Arkansas, on the question of levying a countywide 1/4 of 1% sales and use tax and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto.
All right, discussion. J.P. Deacons.
I make a motion that we refer this to the Jails and Law Enforcement Committee.
All right, referring the quarter cents levying tax, seconded by J.P. Lemming. Discussion? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, so that is referred to our Jails Committee, item 15. And then item 16, Counselor.
An ordinance calling a special election in Washington County, Arkansas, on the questions of issuing bonds under Amendment Number 62 to the Constitution of the State of Arkansas for the purpose of financing all or a portion of the cost of capital improvements, levying a new 1/2 of 1% sales and use tax for the purpose of retiring such bonds and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto.
Discussion. J.P. Madison.
I would like to refer this, I would like to make a motion that we refer this to the Jails and Law Enforcement Committee.
There's been a motion to refer to the Jails Committee, second by J.P. Madison. Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Okay, item 16 also goes to the Jails Committee. I know we just put these committees together. Jails, you guys are going to be busy already, right off the bat. Okay, that's item 18. We don't have committee reports because we just put the committees together, and we sent that out. Item 17, we sent that out to you guys, I guess, last week. Oh, we had 2 more. That's right. Let me see where I put it. Let's see, 17. That's right. We had 2 more. Okay, item 17. Is that J.P. Deacons?
Attorney Lester, will you please read this by title only?
An ordinance amending Washington County Code Section 2-33.
Judge Wood, I bring this to my colleagues on the Quorum Court in an effort to make us more efficient and more transparent. If you'll read through this ordinance, what it does is it lets us on the Quorum Court commit to certain dates and certain timings before we submit an ordinance. It also commits us to, when we introduce an ordinance, it should go first to its appropriate standing committee. And therefore, I believe that our standing committee should have the most up-to-date information on those important ordinances. Then the standing committees will refer that to our full court. We can do that through using our secretary, Ms. Patty. I want everyone to realize I am not trying to take away any of the power from any of the JPs on the Quorum Court. There are provisions in here. I know that there are certain things that come up that are emergencies that we would not want to wait on certain committees to meet, that we would want to take those up in a regular meeting, and there are provisions in here to do that. So I just feel like this gives us most notice and the most deliberative process for us to take up these ordinances. There have been comments by my colleagues, and I'm also concerned about having these ordinances come to us right before a meeting, and that we're supposed to digest these and make the appropriate decision. Lots of times I don't feel like I have the adequate time for that already in my tenure here. So I submit this to the court, and I would ask that I make a motion that we pass this.
We got a motion by J.P. Deacons to amend the Washington County Code Section 233, looking at ordinances to go to before the standing committee. Second by J.P. Deacons. J.P. Deacon, and now J.P. Jenkins. All right, second by J.P. Jenkins. Discussion. Any discussion? J.P. Madison, and then J.P. Pond.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. I have some hesitancy about this because I don't know under what circumstances ordinances have previously come straight to the court. If maybe our attorney could enlighten us about that. I just don't want to tie our hands. And since this was just given to us a few minutes ago, I haven't really read it. So I don't know where the loophole is for us to take something up if we really need to. So if Mr. Lester could tell us, I'm concerned about us shutting off an avenue we might need.
So this ordinance would, right now, the way that your rules work, it appears that any member of the Quorum Court can bring any matter to the Quorum Court. And so it doesn't matter if it goes to committee and passes, goes to committee and fails, or never goes to a committee at all. It can just be brought to the Quorum Court. And so, based on the request of J.P. Deacons, all this does is it doesn't require, but it strongly suggests that ordinances be submitted to a committee for consideration. It doesn't limit or eliminate the ability to bring an ordinance. We know there are ordinances, and some of them come from the judge's office, because sometimes we have appropriation ordinances that we can't wait a month, and it's not an issue of do we have the money or is there a debate about it. It's paying a bill sort of thing that we need to take care of immediately. And so the change would still allow that. It would require a 2/3 vote, which is what's required under Robert's Rules of Order, to add an item, to suspend the rules and add an item. And so it would take the same vote as to suspend the rules in case there was an emergency or something that did come up. But other than that, without that 2/3 vote to suspend the rules and to add the item, then it would take it would need to go to the committee first. And that would be the only thing. Right now, you have committees, but nothing is required to go to them.
I know, and I'm familiar with the other, what J.P. Deacons is proposing, where things must go through a committee or should go through a committee, but we only have 3 committees: personnel, county services, and jails, right?
Mm-hmm. And finance and budget.
Well, yeah, but that's everything. I'm just concerned that somebody might have an ordinance that didn't really fit under any of those umbrellas. How would we deal with that?
We can make a call. I think we can make a call and send it to either any of them, and or at least the finance and budget where everybody's there. And that becomes your prerogative to take to the finance and budget, because that's where all the JPs will be anyway. Anything that's going to be dealing with money needs to go to the finance and budget. So if there's a particular ordinance or issue that's come up that does not fall in the jails, law enforcement courts, or does not fall in the county services, public, or in the, personnel, then we can refer it over to finance and budget.
Well, if we wanted to
Or
refer,
suspend the rule.
if we wanted to refer this to committee, where would it go?
But this one, I would say finance and budget. Well, it said, the suggestion was to sit with the county attorney on your ordinances. So as you guys are looking at ordinances, to sit down with him, and then you can make sure that we're getting into the right committees.
So if we wanted to have an ordinance saying that all ordinances must go to a committee first, or should go to a committee first, how
Well-
would we pick where we would send this?
Based on,
It's not personnel,
No,
county services?
yes, and you got county services, and your ordinance would have come to the
it would
county
be
attorney
based on
first.
where the person introducing the ordinance would direct
To their committee?
which committee they wanted that to go to, which committee it should go to, yes.
You still, and I think what he shared, and I think it's important, that you still have the special, if there's a need for something that no one can put their finger on emergency, then we can still do that. I think the majority, 95% of all our ordinances, we know they can go into somebody's bucket. And so might as well go to the committee and work.
Tell
through
me
those.
where it says that we can still bring de novo ordinances straight to the quorum court.
It's in subsection, the new subsection E, says any ordinance that does not comply with the requirements, it'd be on the back page at line 51. Requirements herein shall be deemed to be out of order if presented at a meeting of the quorum court, provided, however, that by a two-third vote of the members of the quorum court, the requirements herein may be suspended.
So it requires a two-thirds vote.
Well, that's, yes, and that's just based on what Robert's rules require, and which is what the court has adopted as its governing rules.
But right now, we don't have to do that. We could just come straight to the quorum court.
That's correct, because right now it says that any member, any JP can place any item on the agenda. If you bring something the night of and it has to be added, then it takes a vote to adopt. But other than that, if you were to call and request something to be put on the agenda, it can be put on the agenda without any vote at this point.
Okay. I think that's what is giving me pause, because a member may have a very good idea. Now, I don't particularly like what we did tonight, where we added a lot of ordinances at the last minute to the agenda. I think that's something we should strive to avoid. And I'm not suggesting that I want that to continue. But I do think if a member had an idea for an ordinance that perhaps had some urgency to it for something coming up in the county, that they should still be able to do that without a two-thirds vote of the members of the quorum court beforehand. So I'm going to be hesitant on this one.
J.B. Harbison.
So an ordinance could be killed in committee and not get out of committee, and so therefore it would not be put on the agenda for the quorum court. And that's C. It says all proposed ordinance shall be referred by a standing committee to the full quorum court for inclusion on the agenda of any regular or specially called meeting of the quorum court. I know of an instance where that happened, and it came to the quorum court and it passed. And it was the planning, it was zoning for the county, because it failed in committee. So that happened several years ago. So things do fail in committee and then come to the quorum court. Now, you referred to that anything within a timely manner could be put on the agenda. What do we, and not have to have two-thirds vote? What is that timely manner?
In 6 days. 6 days.
Currently, it's before the agenda's put out.
And that is the week before?
We typically, Ms. Burnett puts the agenda out at noon on Friday before the Thursday quorum court meeting.
Okay, so this does not, I really think things need to go to committee. I really do, because we can hash things out there, and most of the time when somebody does bring something, it gets sent back to committee so that we can hash it out. And the new members will learned that most everything's done in committee meeting, and that's why our quorum court meetings usually go quickly. So, you know, I'm in favor of everything going through committee, but also I know that things happen, and I just want to make clear that we're not taking the power away from any individual JP person that has a strong feeling about bringing something before the quorum court. I don't want to take that away from anyone. But I do agree things need to go to committee, but
I hear you, and I think,
Waiting.
and you said it, and I think both J.P. Deacons and the councilor, they highlighted again that it can be, rules can be suspended, it can be brought on by the general vote of the
Or-
court. Or send it, the timely manner to
Monday,
get
by
it.
Monday before the quorum, okay, that's all.
Was it Friday?
Friday,
Friday,
excuse me,
yeah.
Friday at noon,
Yes.
yes.
J.P. Bowman?
Thank you, Judge. You know, I think that most everybody on the quorum court attends the budget, attends all the,
Committee.
all the meetings, whether we're on that committee or not. So we go away entertained and informed from those meetings whether we get to vote or not. But then we become prepared then when we have a quorum court meeting or budget and finance, that we know the details and we can have a informed opinion about what to do to vote. So I think probably just having 6 days ahead of time is not excessive to request that amendments or motions or whatever be put on the schedule. So a Friday afternoon before a Thursday meeting is not excessive in my opinion. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Any other discussion? J.P. Pine?
I have reservations about doing anything that would cause something not to make it to the court because of not being able to come out of a committee. That's and many times I've been appointed to committees that other folks who weren't on that committee did not appreciate the situation. Something that we managed, something that we handled. Could have been somebody thought they should have been on that committee. I just, I just don't think maybe I know everything about this. I mean, it looks very simple and there's been some discussion. I'm not, well, here for an example, because this was brought to us and wasn't put on the regular agenda, it hasn't been discussed in committee. So I believe I'll abstain from this vote. Thank you.
Any other discussion? J.P. Jenkins and then J.P. Madison.
I appreciate this ordinance, Mr. Deacons. As a new member and as a audience member, both November and December, I watched ordinance come through to the court the day of or the moment they sat down and they were looking over paperwork and trying to figure it out. I feel like if it goes to committee, that gives us time for consideration and time to understand better and be more transparent with our public. If we know what we're looking at coming into court, we can better relay that to the public and let them know what's going on. When we see something come right before us at meeting and the public sees it at the same time, I don't believe that's transparency. Thank you.
Thank you, J.P. Jenkins. J.P. Madison.
I think we all agree that it is the more light that can shine on a subject, the better, and the better we'll all understand it. So I think it's definitely a plus when things go to committee. But I am concerned about somebody being shut out of a committee or having an idea that doesn't fit or for timeliness reasons needs to bypass the committee. Now, I think I heard somebody say that any member could still bring a proposal to the full quorum court if they got it on the agenda before the Friday before the meeting, or is that what current rules are?
Those are the current rules. This would
So
change
this
that.
would
Yes.
cut out that avenue?
Yes.
Okay. So it would still, everything would need to go to a committee? Okay, then I'm going to vote
Unless you
no.
suspend the rules
Thank you.
and add. JP Hires.
Thank you. Would it be possible to change the language in this to make sure that we can still bring ordinances in that case to the quorum court, to make sure that that's still allowed?
It's on there.
You can make a motion to amend any part of it that you want, yes.
Washington.
Thank you, Judge. I just would like some clarification because it reads here that as long as we get the rough draft form in at least 5 working days, that it can still be considered. So that hasn't changed, right? I don't. Do what? Well, it's, but it's not changed according to this document because the only thing that is stricken through is that there's a strike through for the word sponsoring and interchange for introducing. So that part still has not changed. It's my understanding that this is to address those last-minute ordinances and things that are just introduced to the body 5 minutes before a meeting. So it just seems like there's a little confusion there, and I would just like some clarification. It just, from the way that this ordinance reads, that as long as it is still submitted 5 working days prior to the date, then any member can still submit it. So I just want to clear that up, and if JP Deacons, if you could just clear that up for us. That seems like that's the original intent.
Yeah, I believe,
Go ahead, JP Deacons.
sorry. I believe that it is written correctly in terms of what we're saying here is that the draft needs to be submitted 5 days ahead of the meeting in which the JP wants to introduce the bill. So in this case.
No, not to, it does, I'm sorry for interrupting, but it doesn't say committee. I think that's the confusion.
Correct. But I believe my intent is that the JP would need to bring it to the committee meeting. If they brought it, they could still bring it to the regular meeting, but it would require suspension of the rules.
And you're saying JP Washington. Okay, so you're looking at section 233B, which is keeping somewhat what we have now. Friday before noon, if somebody's adding something to the agenda. And so that provision is in here, and I think JP Deacons, if it stays in here and you guys adopt it, you still have your window to get that in. The only thing was stricken was sponsoring as opposed to introduction.
The intent was for it.
And then
Oh.
C contradicts B, so that needs to be cleared up. That's where the confusion is. That's what I was trying to say. Because then, may I have the floor, please?
JP Washington.
I think that the confusion is that subsection C contradicts subsection B, because subsection C then goes on to say that all proposed ordinances shall be referred to a committee. So that contradicts what it says in subsection B. Subsection B says that they all shall be presented 5 days ahead, and then in the very next section, it says that all have to be referred to a standing committee, so it can't be both. I think if we could address that, that may clear up the confusion, and we can come to a quick resolution.
Do we have an amendment?
Can we send this to a committee, please? You said
we
there's
want
a
this
committee
finance
for
and budget.
everything, so
Second.
rather than to try and amend this
Yeah.
here on the
So I
fly.
got a motion to send to committee, and I would entertain that it go to your jail and budget committee. I mean, your finance and budget committee. I've got a motion. We got a second?
Second.
We got a second? Who's second?
Me.
All right, JP Hires. So we have a motion to send ordinance number 19-111 to the Finance and Budget Committee. All in favor? Those opposed?
Do we have any discussion?
Okay.
You can in committee.
Go ahead, JP Washington.
I just think that this is something that doesn't necessarily need to be prolonged. We can figure this out tonight, because if we refer it to committee, the same thing is going to happen when we get in committee. So I think that this is really something that we could figure out tonight. Either we want to send it to committee, or we don't, like, we just need to tweak the language a little bit. I really don't think this
You
is
have
something.
recommendations?
I have a point of order.
J.P. Madison.
I believe we just voted to send it to finance, didn't we?
We didn't have the, we didn't have the discussion before the vote.
Well, I didn't do
was
the
no
discussion,
discussion.
so it wasn't, I didn't do it. I just called the voice. It needed to be some discussion.
So that vote didn't count.
It did not. There was not a discussion. And so, J.P. Washington, you had the floor. You're looking at language. Do you have a language that you would recommend?
Actually,
And J.P. Deacon?
I don't have any language that I would recommend, because I would be fine with either it going to committee or not. I mean, either way. But I would just encourage anyone that has an issue with either of those options may want to suggest what they would want to see.
J.P. Bowman?
Thank you, Judge. You know, I think this fits into something I plan to propose at the next meeting. I want to propose that we establish some procedural rules that don't absolutely follow the Roberts rules and modify them to fit our situation. And I think this would probably fit nicely into that discussion. And so if it'd be all right with you guys, I'm going to be making that motion soon at another meeting. So I think that would fit neatly in here, and we'll have a chance time to ruminate on it, ask a lot of questions, and see just what would work. Thank you.
J.P. Madison and then J.P. Pine.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. If we send this to committee the first week of committee meetings in February and vote on it at the February Quorum Court meeting, that's pretty soon. And I don't know that anybody's got something burning they need to get done before then, and if they do, we'll do it. I don't see any harm at all in sending this to committee and getting the attorney to look at it with some care and not at the last minute like this was presented tonight. And let's make sure everything does flow and that Section B doesn't conflict with Section C. And our attorney is the best person to do that. So may I try this again to make a motion to send it to finance?
It's on the floor. It's being discussed. J.P. Pine.
I want to point out, maybe I want to re-say this a little more clearly. Maybe I've had a change of heart, but let's keep it in mind that we're all in agreement that it's best to send things through committee whenever possible. And that being said, I feel a little bit funny about discussing passing an ordinance that everything ought to be sent through committee whenever possible, but our ordinance didn't go through committee. So I think I've changed my mind. I think if this has got to be voted on tonight, I'll have to vote
J.P.
no.
Deacons and then J.P. Washington. And then we'll.
Well, in response to my colleague, I believe if we're going to impose rules on ourselves as a body, I believe that's most appropriate in the general meeting with the full body. Now, I know that Finance and Budget Committee is a committee of the whole, and therefore would be convenient to do such things. But I think that the proper place to discuss this and deliberate on it would be here at the committee of the whole. Now, once again, I am not trying to take power away from any JPs to bring anything to a meeting whenever they need to. There's no magic in that 2/3 vote number. That's based in Robert's rules, which are the rules we abide by. And so that's the only place where that comes up. Now, I would like to understand more about what specifically is the hang-up with my colleagues here on bringing it to the court. I agree with Justice Washington that there's probably a solution here that would satisfy everyone. And I would like to see that get resolved before we move into the committees with a full slate of work for this next year. Thank you, Judge.
J.P. Deacons, do you have an amendment to the language?
I have.
No? Okay. So we got to take up before we take up the language or amendment, we got to take up the motion.
No, I just want to speak on that.
Oh, what he just said? Okay, J.P. Washington.
I would just like to reiterate what J.P. Deacons just said, that I would hope that the colleagues would reconsider sending this to a committee. This really is an easy fix, and as I read over this right now, even though that's not what we're voting on, we can change the language to say that all proposed ordinances not submitted within the 5-day window will then be referred to a standing committee, and that solves the whole problem. So I don't know that this is necessarily something that needs to go to committee. So as we get ready to vote, I would hope that all of our colleagues do reconsider that maybe this is something that isn't, and that in 2 minutes, we could get this language figured out.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to refer to committee. It was seconded by J.P. Jenkins. We had discussion, public comments. So just a motion, okay, it's just a motion. All right. We'll go to Ms. Patty. Ms. Patty?
Susan Cunningham.
And this is to move it to committee. Go ahead. No. The motion is to refer this to committee.
Susan Cunningham. No. Harvey Bowman. Judith Yanez. No. Patrick Deacon.
No.
Lisa Ecke. No. Sam Duncan.
No.
Chandra Washington.
No.
Andrea Jenkins.
No.
Suki Hires.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Willie Lemming.
No.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
No.
Okay, so the motion fails. All right, so we're back to where we were. I think we have J.P. Washington who is offering an amendment to J.P. Deacon's ordinance. You want to read the amendment?
I move that we amend the original motion to strike section C and to amend section B to say that all general ordinances not presented to the county attorney by the member of the quorum court introducing that ordinance in rough draft at least 5 working days prior to the date of the meeting at which the member of the quorum court wishes to introduce the ordinance shall be referred to committee. The county attorney shall review the ordinance in rough draft form for legal sufficiency and prepare it in a proper legal form and forward it to the court secretary for the meeting scheduling.
Council parliamentarian, read it again.
Just to make sure I've got this correct, J.P. Washington. Your motion is to amend, and your amendment is to strike shall be in subsection B, and then strike the remove paragraph or subsection C. Is that correct?
So it is to remove subsection C, but the way that I read it, that is actually incorporated into subsection B. So it will read that all general ordinances shall be presented by the county attorney by the member of the,
I thought you said not.
not presented to the county attorney by the member of the quorum court introducing that ordinance in rough draft form at least 5 working days prior to the date of the meeting at which the member of the quorum court wishes to introduce the ordinance shall be referred to a standing committee.
And then continue.
And then continue.
Okay.
Go ahead, J.P. Deacons.
I appreciate your amendment, J.P. Washington, and so we still allow ourselves, I'm just making sure that we would still allow ourselves to adopt an agenda item the night of through suspension of the rules.
That part didn't change because that's in section E.
Right, thank you.
That's only,
Good.
yeah.
I believe so.
All right.
I want to make sure just to make sure we got the motion correct. Motion to amend. You want to strike shall be from subsection B and insert not.
That's correct.
And then strike subsection C in its entirety. Is that correct?
And you're inserting.
And insert at the end
Shall
of
be referred.
the first sentence, shall be referred to a
Standing
standing
committee.
committee.
it's the same.
Okay,
After ordinance.
and shall,
It's after ordinance, right?
After ordinance.
After ordinance would be, shall be.
insert, so tell me what I'm sorry, just to make sure we get the motion right. We're inserting shall,
Shall be referred
To a standing committee.
to a standing committee.
Period.
okay,
And then it'll continue to the county attorney.
period, okay.
And then it'll go to the county attorney shall, that all stays in. Okay? J.P. Deacons, there's an amendment to your motion.
I'll second. I'll accept it.
You accept it? Okay, so we have a, all right, so we got a new amendment, with the language being, all general ordinances not presented to the county attorney by the member of the quorum court, introducing that ordinance in rough draft form at least 5 working days prior to the date of the meeting at which the member of the quorum court wishes to introduce the ordinance shall be referred to a standing committee. The county attorney shall review the ordinance in rough draft form for legal sufficiency and prepare the proper legal form and forward to the court secretary for meeting schedule. And section C is struck.
Mr. Judge?
Where's that?
Just, so that we can just, be specific that the county attorney is only reviewing those ordinances that are submitted.
Mike, we can't hear.
Oh, you're right.
I apologize. So, I just asked for a point of clarification, with the judge, just to ask if we needed to include language to specify that the county attorney is only reviewing those ordinances that are, submitted the 5 working days, the 5 working days prior to the date.
Well, it says that, right? Presented to the county attorney by the member?
Right, but that was before we, added the amended part about the things being referred to committee. So are we saying, and it's J.P. Deacon's, ordinance, so are we saying that the county attorney only needs to review the ones that are submitted 5 days in advance? Are we saying that the county attorney still needs to review the ones that go through the standing committee? Because that's just a little confusing, that's all.
He sees them all.
You see them all?
Typically, but
Oh,
that's
well
up to
then
the
it's no
court.
problem.
Yeah.
Only for legal sufficiency, just to
Right.
make sure that we're following.
J.P. Madison and then J.P. Lemming.
Oh, I'm sorry, my mic was on. I'm afraid that the way we've amended this, it just deals with ordinances that are not presented to the county attorney. And then he wouldn't ever review them, which is called for in the last sentence, that the county attorney shall review the ordinance. Well, if you don't present it to him, it won't be reviewed. And then we go straight to the quorum court.
No.
It's become
It-
garbled to me.
It says that if it was not presented to him, it goes to the standing committee.
All general ordinances not presented to the county attorney by the member of the quorum court introducing that ordinance in rough draft form at least 5 working days prior to the date of the meeting at which the member of the quorum court wishes to introduce the ordinance. That's not even a sentence.
Shall be referred to the standing committee.
Shall be referred to
The
committee.
standing committee.
When is the county attorney going to review this ordinance then?
When either coming out of the standing committee or if they come to him in another appropriate time.
So it goes straight to committee without the oversight of the county attorney?
Well, it comes out of committee with the ordinance. So here's what we're proposing before we take it to quorum court. That's how all those ordinances are put together either, some are presented as committee, some are made and then come out of committee to be presented as an ordinance that he crafts.
Well, if it goes to committee and comes out, it can't be changed and then go to the quorum court. It would have to go back to committee. So if it's presented to the committee without review by the county attorney, then.
The county attorney writes them all,
Yeah.
doesn't he?
Pardon me?
The county attorney writes them all, doesn't he? All the ordinances?
With input from the various elected or whatever the issue is.
No?
But
Now,
I
there was
think-
an ordinance that was introduced at your last meeting that never came to the county attorney's office that was handed to all of you. And that was not reviewed by me. It was introduced by J.P. Eva Madison. So I do not necessarily review all ordinances.
I mean,
I will, but
One that comes before you, when would be the cutoff date for you will review it? Say, I mean,
I review all of them before they get put on an agenda. Typically for a committee or to the quorum court, I typically review all the ordinances before they're ever placed on an agenda.
J.P. Deacons?
The county attorney review of an ordinance was not a problem that this ordinance was meant to fix. It's a problem that we already have. If it's a problem that my colleagues have, I invite another ordinance to fix that issue. Thank you very much, Judge.
Okay, so we have a motion with accepted amendments as read. Do we have a second? All right. Discussion, any other discussion? Public comments. Come on, Todd Crane.
No. This is a motion to amend. This is not a public comment. Public comment would be on passage of the actual ordinance.
On the passage, so we'll get to that one then. All right. J.B. Pine?
It's becoming more clear to me. This is, the amendment has cleaned up a lot of clutter and indecision, and I will be voting for this amendment. I'm afraid to say I'll do anything else because I've already changed my mind 2 or 3 times. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Patty. Go ahead, Ms. Patty.
This is only on the amendment.
On the amendment to change the measure. And the wording being 35 through 41, as we read. Go ahead, Ms. Patty.
Susan Cunningham. Yes. Harvey Bowman. Yes. Judith Yanez. Yes. Patrick Deacon. Yes. Lisa Ecke. Yes. Sam Duncan.
yes.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins.
Yes.
Suki Hires.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
No.
Willie Lemming.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes to amend the language of the original motion. Now we'll take up the motion. We got a motion?
Move it.
Second.
And second by J.P. Lemming. Any discussion?
Hopefully that's
J.P.
all.
Deacons and then J.P. Lemmings. Any discussion? Public comments now. J.P. Crane. J.P. Crane. Todd Crane.
Todd Crane, Fayetteville. I encourage y'all to take this to committee because y'all have confused the issue. The original ordinance, as it was written and explained, the intention was that all ordinances go through committee unless there's an emergency or last-minute provision. The language as proposed actually changes that. The language as proposed makes that only items within 5 days, or items referred before 5 days can go straight to the full court with the way the language was proposed. And the way it's actually written right now, according to what the intent was, the way it's written achieves that. Because the intention and the way 233B is written is that the member of the court sends it to the attorney 5 days before the meeting, meaning the committee meeting. So it has to go to the attorney before it goes to the committee meeting, is what its intention is because of item C. Item C is what makes item B actually make sense. Because item C says they can only come to the full court if it's been referred by a standing committee. So the intention of the ordinance with the proposed language, I believe, undoes what the intended result was. And so that you have time to digest this and look at it, I suggest either you table it or send it to committee to actually be talked about where people can sit down and read it ahead of time. Because I think the language as proposed has the exact opposite effect unless the 5-day rule is invoked. I think it has the opposite effect of what you're intending.
Okay, Mr. Crane.
Lorraine O'Neill, citizen of Fayetteville. Thank you all. I understand the spirit of this ordinance that's being proposed. But my concern is, now, and I don't know, I may be speaking out of ignorance here. My concern is that the committee meetings are not televised. And we just want an award for transparency. And this could eliminate that transparency element. If things are only discussed in committee, because I have seen some very, very lively discussions take place in this room on ordinances that were proposed that day. And I'm concerned that by going to committee, that destroys that transparency element. Thank you. I would be against this.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Come on.
Oh, my name is Lou Sharp, and like the lady just spoke, and I understand the importance of work in committees and things like that, but my biggest fear is it's going to hurt the transparency of the court, and that's just so vital as we learn to trust the court, and then things are going to die in committee, and we're never going to hear anything about it. So I think the dialogue is really, really important, and I think you read things in the paper all the time, it's like, well, how did that happen? You know, so I think transparency is key here. Even if it gets referred back to committee and hashed out there, at least you can bring us back the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sharp.
Elizabeth Koger, Fayetteville, again. I just have a question, and maybe I'm just new to this, but how do citizens know when these committees are meeting?
They'll be posted online.
Online?
And then
Okay.
they also, we will start live streaming them as well, so you will see
Okay.
those as well.
Okay, and they are open to public?
That's correct.
Will public be able to comment at those?
Depends on what the item is, yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, and one more question. What about proposed ordinances that are on the agenda, like for tonight? Are those posted online too, so we can review them beforehand on the county website?
If we get them early enough, yeah.
Okay, okay.
That's what we're working on. Thank you. Mr. Crane, you already had your opportunity.
Get used to that.
Todd, you
Yeah.
already had your opportunity to do your public comment on
I
this
had
one.
3 minutes, so I thought I didn't use 3 minutes.
You get
Okay.
one time to speak.
Okay, well, I just wanted to clarify that, something for them, but.
Any other public
Can I
comments?
request the rules be suspended for a minute?
All right. JP Eki.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. I want to make something very clear. The ordinances that are posted on the website I've got a lot of feedback, I don't know, for our citizens to see are there only if they followed the process. However, if they're sprung on us like the last minute, like they were at the meeting before or any other time, they don't have an opportunity to publish those online, and the public isn't aware of it. I believe that this is for the purpose of transparency. So, and let me be clear on this to those who think it might not be. This will give the county attorney and everybody working up in the judge's office and our executive assistant, Ms. Burnett, to working on these ordinances to publish them for the public before we meet. You will have the information. It's very difficult to review something with the gravity of an ordinance, and your vote, either yes or no, matters. And you haven't had a time to really reflect or have somebody send you an email, Ms. O'Neill, and say, well, did you think about this, JP Eki? This will give us that opportunity. Now, it does not exclude last-minute emergencies. We couldn't do it. It doesn't do that. But this, I believe, is another layer of transparency. If you can see the diamond, I'm trying to turn the diamond for you so you can see it maybe from what we're looking at, and not for us not to have these last-minute ordinances. And so I feel like this would be good for our constituents and the public to read it before, so that way you can comment during public comment on the ordinance. Otherwise, you don't have that opportunity. I thank you, Judge.
I would just like to address the public. If you go to the Washington County, Arkansas website, you could go to Quorum Court and press on a calendar. And if you press on the calendar date of whatever meeting, that's where you'll find the agenda for the meeting. So you go to calendar, press on the date, and then you'll be able to find the agenda. You wouldn't have seen 3 of these ordinances on the agenda because they didn't show up until today. So therefore, I appreciate this ordinance because it does give us the time, and it makes sure that 5 days before a quorum court meeting, you all are going to be able to click on that website and see everything that's going to be on that agenda, rather than come in here tonight and sit and wonder what's this, like the rest of us. Thank you.
Okay, so here, you got a question, Tom?
Yes, I do. I did raise my hand earlier. Is this on? Okay. Tom Sissom, Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. I have a question about something in the ordinance that has not been discussed tonight, Section G, which limits discussion by JPs. And I was wondering if anybody cares to try and explain why they want to limit that.
JP Washington.
That is part of Robert's Rules of Order, which are the rules that we've adopted. So according to Robert's rules, you're only supposed to speak on a particular issue a maximum of twice, and you have a certain time limit to do that. So that would be my assumption why that's here, because it's Robert's rules.
Just, it's my observation that has not been the practice of the quorum court.
No, we need to do better.
All right.
You're right.
Thank you, Sissom. Okay, so right now, we're going to go ahead and ask, J.P. Deacons ask the parliamentarian to read the motion. Because it's been amended, we want to make sure we get it clear and we know what we're talking and voting on.
There was a motion made to adopt as amended, which is an improper motion, because what's happened is you have voted and agreed to amend your ordinance, so which puts it back on a first reading. And so because this is not an emergency and there's no emergency clause, it will be read for the first time unless the rules are suspended tonight to move it to a second and/or third reading. It will not go any further than that. So I think what would be proper right now would be to reread by title only for the first reading, and then it would be pleasure of the court from there.
Go ahead, read.
So it'll be an ordinance amending Washington County Code Section 2-33 as amended.
Okay. J.P. Johnson.
Yes, I move we suspend the rules and go to the second reading.
There's been a motion to move, suspend the rules, go to the second, and it was seconded by J.P. Ecke.
I have a parliamentary
discussion?
question. Parliamentary question, please. Are we able to still amend this ordinance at this point, or is it just moving on from this point?
This is for this one.
You can amend the amended ordinance, yes.
I can amend the amended ordinance. Okay, can I do that now?
You can, there's a
But
motion
there's a
on the
motion
floor
on
to
the floor?
suspend the rules, which would take a precedent over
Okay.
your subsequent amendment at this time.
We got a motion and a second. Discussion, comments, public comments. Ms. Patty? This will suspend the rules and move to a second reading.
Susan Cunningham.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Judith Yanez.
Yes.
Patrick Deacons.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Sam Duncan.
Yes.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins.
Yes.
Suki Hires.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
No.
Willie Lemming.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, so passes on to the second reading. Read again,
Motion
Counselor.
to suspend the, you haven't done it yet.
An ordinance amending Washington County Code Section 2-33 as amended.
motion to suspend the rules and advance it to second reading? Third reading, I'm sorry.
There's been motion to suspend the rules, move to a third reading. Seconded by J.P. Duncan. Discussion? J.P. Pine.
I believe we're moving on to second and third reading when we have a JP on the court that was looking to make an amendment. So I think we need to, we go ahead and do third and final reading and then have a request for an amendment, or should, we'd have to start all over again if we do.
The suspension is going to proceed.
Okay.
That's correct. So we're on the primary. Her amendment will be to amend the amended motion.
Sure.
So after, yes. If it's adopted or taken, so. Any other discussion? Public comments? All right. Ms. Patty? Second, this is on, moving to the third reading.
Susan Cunningham.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Judith Yanez. Patrick Deacons.
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Sam Duncan.
Yes.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins.
Can I say why no?
Yes or no?
No.
Suki Hires.
No.
Sue Madison. Willie Lemming.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Butch Pond.
No.
And Lance Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes. Okay. Last time.
An ordinance amending Washington County Code Section 2-33.
Judge, would I make a motion that we pass this ordinance?
As amended?
As amended.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion? Public comment?
Yes, I have something. I'm not sure if I'm able to comment on this point, but on section G where it says each member of the quorum court may speak about an ordinance twice for a maximum of 5 minutes. Actually, according to Robert's rules, which I have in front of me, it says you may speak in debate twice on any debatable motions on the same day. Each time you may speak for up to 10 minutes. So that was why I was hoping we could amend that to say that we could speak up to 10 minutes instead of 5 minutes at a time twice.
Which would be J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. The Roberts Rules also says that you can speak 2 times on each amendment.
Right, that's how this.
And so what it amounts to, we wind up with one person could basically dominate the conversation all night long by the time they have 2 10-minute sessions on each amendment, just like tonight. But one thing I'd like to suggest, we do have the right to reconsider anything that's done. So if the committee does not pass an ordinance that was given to them, we on the quorum court can go ahead and ask for reconsideration of that amendment or of that motion. So I think we're making a great big mess out of this thing here when it's a very simple solution that we have the opportunity to review. Thank you.
Any other discussion? J.P. Yanez.
J.P. Jenkins, does that say a total of 10 minutes?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, it does. It says each time you may speak up to 10 minutes.
Up to.
These limits apply to any organization that has not adopted special rules setting other limits as many do.
Okay. I think, like, they could speak twice the way it's written right now, a total of 10 minutes, but 5 minutes each time, so. But it's
Still getting there.
I think it's long enough.
Robert's Rules allows you to speak twice for 10 minutes, up to 10 minutes each time. Now, you can speak for 1 minute, but you don't get to reserve any time. You can speak a second time for 10 minutes, but you don't get any of your time from your first. And so this ordinance would be limiting that from the 10 minutes each time to a 5-minute max each time.
Right.
Is what this would be limiting. So this would be limiting Roberts, which is why it would be, I'm assuming why it's in here, since we're technically you're going to be adopting to limit what Robert says.
May I reply?
Sure.
I just feel that that's squashing a JP's, what's the word I'm looking for? according to Robert's rules, I feel like that's squashing a JP's ability to speak longer than 5 minutes if felt necessary on an issue.
I believe, I'm not speaking for or against an ordinance, but just procedurally, according to Roberts, you could still then suspend the rules to allow somebody additional time to speak.
And we've done that.
And suspending the rules is a 2/3 majority vote. I'm just telling you.
I just feel like that's still not following the rules. I feel like we need to follow the rules.
JB Duncan?
I think if you can't sell something in 3 minutes, then you can't sell it. So I think 5 minutes is too long still, but let's just vote on this thing and get it through.
JP Hires.
I really do appreciate the ordinance and I appreciate the sentiment behind it, but I feel like this thing has gotten so muddied up. I'm not really sure where we're going with this. I feel like it's just not very clear. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to vote no on it just because I'm unclear about where this is actually going.
JP Eki?
One last comment. I was a personnel chairman, and I established certain caveats during my meetings, which was very appreciated by J.P. Madison, who was on the committee, that we would not go past 1 hour. And if you had business to do, you better get it done. And I held to that. You put 10 minutes on 15 people, we're going to be here till Christmas. And then you allow them to speak again. I don't think we're limiting anybody, but what we're saying is if you want to speak to an issue, be prepared, have your questions written down, have your points, and be prepared that we do not have 3-hour quorum court meetings, which we have had in the past, and it's ridiculous. We should be able to efficiently and effectively do the county's business in an hour, hour and a half. We also have to pay for law enforcement out there overtime, and that is something that we need to consider. We don't need 10 minutes times 15 twice on a debatable issue. If we have these published, we have them ahead of time, then get your questions ready. Have your points ready. Be prepared when you come to court. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, JP Eki. JP Johnson?
Move the previous question.
All right. So we have a motion on the floor. It's on the third read. It's been second. Discussion, public comments.
He's called the question, which means we end debate. He's
Or
got to have
miss-
a 2/3 vote. He's got to have a 2/3 vote to call the question. It's going to be a second as well. Second.
It's been second by JP Duncan. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Ms. Patty?
No, that's, okay.
That's
Sorry.
adoption.
Now we're, the motion to pass as amended.
Pass it as amended.
Is everybody?
So again, the motion on the floor as amended, ordinance, County Code Section 2-33.
Ready? Susan Cunningham.
Yes.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Judith Yanez.
Yes.
Patrick Deacons.
Yes.
Lisa Eki.
Yes.
Sam Duncan.
Yes.
Chandra Washington.
Yes.
Andrea Jenkins.
No.
Suki Hires.
No.
Sue Madison.
No.
Willie Lemming. Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Lance Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes. The motion is adopted as amended. Item 18, JP Pine.
Yes, could Mr. Lester read the ordinance?
An ordinance appropriating the amount of $232,397 from the Jail Fund 3017 to the Jail 3017-0418 budget for 2019.
Yes, thank you. This was originally in the budget, I believe, and somehow when we finalized it, it wasn't in there in writing, and I believe this, the way this is appropriated, it's coming from another fund at the jail, and so it's not going to affect our budget. We just need to do this so legally they can obtain these vehicles So detainees can be transported in a safe manner, in a reliable vehicle, not breaking down if we're transporting from another government entity or simply from our jail up here to the courthouse. And so, just to get this cleared up, I move to pass this ordinance number 18.
You got a motion by J.P. Pond, pass the ordinance appropriating an amount of $232 from the jail fund to the jail, seconded by J.P. Harbison. Any discussion? J.P. Bowman and then J.P. Johnson.
Thank you, Judge. I guess the first question that comes to my mind is, does the jail budget have enough slack in some of these provisions to take $232,000 plus out of it to buy vehicles? That seems like a tremendous amount of money to be able to transfer out of one budget area and change the application of it. Are we doing a good job checking out the details there and being sure those budgets are in appropriate position? You know, that's a lot of money to be able to use just to move from one budget item to another. So I'd like to have some more explanation on that.
J.P. Johnson, as the sheriff comes up to answer.
Yeah, I mean, my question is, we just passed the budget, and are we saying this wasn't in the budget?
Sheriff?
So this is our capital request line item, and this was submitted. It was discussed early on when the court approved our budget initially. As far as paperwork goes, it didn't make the final packet. That was, whoever wants to address this, if you need to address it, that's fine. But we did make the request. It was approved prior to, but it's not in the final budget.
So what you're asking for is another $250,000, is that correct?
No, it was already approved.
It's there. This is out of our sales tax money in the jail, which we've already budgeted for because we assumed that it was in there because our request was for that. We make capital requests on both sides of our budget, the sheriff's enforcement and then the jail side, which has got the maintenance and operation fund. So this request was made.
Well, I got that.
Okay.
But it wasn't approved, obviously.
Yeah,
well, I think if you ask the setting members, it was approved. The paperwork just was not in the budget.
J.P.
So this
Director Worthing.
raises the budget $232,000.
Come on, Director Worthing.
Well, but it's coming out of operations and maintenance, isn't it?
Yeah, the sales tax that operates the jail, that's the fund it's in. So it wouldn't be moved anywhere. It's already in that fund.
Director Worthing.
Yeah, what happened was they had submitted the request, but they didn't include it in their budget, but they included the letter, and it never was put into the budget, and nobody ever noticed that it wasn't put in the budget. So this money has to come from somewhere. So it would increase the negative $900,000 in the jail budget to a negative $1.2 million. So it would have an effect, but it never was included in the budget. When I got the worksheet for the jail tab, they had included the vehicles for the sheriff, but they hadn't included the amount for the vehicles for the jail in the jail budget. It was the same worksheet but two different tabs, so when I saw that, I wasn't sure if they were wanting to add both or just one. So it never was put into the budget that was approved, and I guess when they reviewed the jail budget, they didn't notice it and nobody else noticed it, but it would increase the jail's budget by the $252,000 from $900,000 to $1.2 million. So, and it would be the negative against the general if it's presented that way. So that's what happened, but this is 250,000 extra that will be added to the budget and decrease our overall reserves.
Okay.
And it was,
Okay, and
so
then,
that's what happened.
all right.
It just didn't get submitted, but it is real money that's got to be taken into account.
thank you, Director Worthing. Treasurer Hill?
Just want to speak on strictly revenue. My carryover for jail, I think was 700,000 or 600,000, but I think it's going to be like 200,000 better than what I projected. So this should be close to a wash on the budget as far as the revenue. I think will be there to cover it.
Okay.
That's carryover.
J.B. Ecking?
Do I?
Are you talking about the quarter-cent sales tax?
No, this has
That- that
nothing to do with
just-
this- nothing to do with that.
with the sales tax. So what Sheriff Helder was saying, that it's coming out of the sales tax revenue. Okay, which bucket is it really coming out of? Or do we decide which bucket it comes out
No,
of?
that's the sales tax is the main funder
Revenue,
of
okay.
that. I'm talking about my carryover revenue that I project to start the new year.
Okay,
That's gonna come in higher than projected, so that's gonna be added. That's gonna be subtracted from the budget, and mine's gonna be added to the budget.
okay, got you.
It just strictly revenue, just carryover revenue. That's what I'm anticipating.
And it'll be in March, when you know? Or-
Whenever they pay all the 2018 bills. So,
Okay,
yeah, March for sure is when we'll.
March for sure.
Okay. J.P. Deacons?
I still don't know that I'm clear on this. This expenditure is going to add to the jail deficit from last year. That's what I mean, I don't care what account it's coming out of or whatever, somebody give me the bottom line, this is adding to the expenses of the jail, it was not budgeted for last year.
That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you very much, Treasurer.
Any other? J.B. Bowman?
Judge, I guess my concern about this, I know that when we're going through the budget thing, the sheriff asked for the step increase for the enforcement people. And the comment was made, it was going to take out vehicles that would normally be purchased for this year and bypass those. And now it looks like we're putting those vehicles back in here in January after saying no to that in December. So I'm a little bit concerned about that discrepancy or that change.
I think you're good, Treasurer. Any, J.P. Jenkins?
If I may, this ordinance was brought before us this evening. We hadn't had a chance to look over it. I feel like this is something that we would need to have that background information on and be able to study the budget to see where this money is coming from. So as of right now, I would have to vote no, unless we can refer it to committee. But I know we've already done that plenty this evening.
That's it. Thank you, Treasurer Hill. Any other public comments? Public comments? All right, so we had, who presented the motion? I forget. Butch. Motion to adopt, seconded by, go ahead, J.B. Lemon.
This capital request come out of the budget for last year. Why, I mean, if it didn't happen, why is this in the budget?
Yeah, I think that's what J.P., Director Worthing said, the justification letter came in.
That's odd.
It doesn't affect the 2018 budget because the 2018 budget's already been passed and approved. This would be a January ordinance that would budget and appropriate the money in January and add to the existing budget. It wouldn't change the 2018 budget.
12/31 is the very end of the year. I mean, that was passed for the next year. Is that not right?
Right, the 2019 budget was passed in December and didn't include this. So this is an ordinance in January that would add to the budget in 2019. So you have the existing 2019 budget that was passed, and this would add to the past budget. So it, so that's the distinction there.
Judge, may I clarify?
Sure.
Just before there's misinformation out there, we did everything we were supposed to do in the budget process. Harvey, you're mistaken about your facts. Early on, we were asked to submit cuts to provide for the step increases. Bill Ussery took that off the table before the budget was voted on, and he said that that's no longer in play. Otherwise, we wouldn't have got the cars in enforcement and some other things that we had proffered. So that was all taken off the table. This was a misstep at another level. We did everything, paperwork-wise, the submission, everything. It just did not make it in the paperwork. There was nothing we could have done other than what we did at the sheriff's office to get this request in. So that's point of clarification. I just don't want misinformation out there that we pulled it and now we're asking for it. That's not the case. The request was put in the timely fashion that it was supposed to be put in, and to our knowledge, it was approved. There you go.
Okay, J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the sheriff, if you wouldn't run off, please. Would you tell us again the importance of passing this?
These are our cars. We have basically over the years had a system by which we roll out our vehicles on the enforcement side, which comes out of general fund, and on the detention side, which is the sales tax issue. These vehicles are transport issues. They get well up in miles, and it becomes a safety issue. They're vans, they're the Tahoes, and everything. We basically, as a court and as a sheriff's office, have entered into the system knowing that there's a routine rollout. We can certainly kick the can down the road, but all it does is build up the danger factor, maintenance issues, and then we're 1 year behind. That's why we entered into this system.
Let me ask you this.
Huh?
It sounds like some little glitch in paperwork happened somewhere in this building. You did everything you were supposed to do, and the sheriff's office, the treasurer thinks there's going to be plenty of money in the carryover. And I would think if one of these kind of transporting cars breaks down on the highway somewhere, the time involved with getting it up and running somewhere out in Arkansas or wherever they're going ends up being a very costly mistake.
You're accurate, and I'm not pointing fingers or casting stones. I can only tell you the misstep did not occur at the sheriff's office on this issue.
Well, since there is the money there, and you did everything you're supposed to do, and you're in dire need of the vehicles, I'm going to support this.
J.P. Deacons.
Sitting on this body now, looking at this, I am not, nor am I trying to cast blame or find fault in what part of the process it went on, but I feel very uncomfortable about correcting a budget that was passed by a previous court where there's 9 new faces on this right now, and I do not have my hands wrapped around the budget. We haven't had time yet. And so I understand the need, and I understand the want and everything like that, but to say, well, we have the money there, let's just spend it right now. That's why I'm on this court. And that's why I went around and got the support that I did to be here. And I don't think it's appropriate, and I don't think that's what the citizens of Washington County want us doing. Let's be deliberate about this. Let's review it. Let's make sure that we're all on the same page. Thank you.
J.P. Jenkins.
I motion to move this to Finance Committee.
It's an improper motion. There's already a motion on the
Oh,
floor.
We got a motion already.
sorry, folks. New to parliamentary procedure.
All right, no further discussion. We had a motion, second, to adopt the ordinance. Miss Patty? Miss Patty?
Susan Cunningham. No. Harvey Bowman. No. Judith Yanez.
Yes.
Patrick Deakins.
No.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Sam Duncan.
No.
Chandra Washington.
No.
Andrea Jenkins.
Yes.
Suki Hires. Sue Madison. Willie Lemming. Ann Harbison. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson.
So it fails, it'll move to a second reading at the next meeting.
So the ordinance motion, it fails, so it'll be moved on to the second reading in February, the next meeting. Because we didn't have enough votes to say in the affirmative, so then that gives more time for some more vetting, that type of thing. That was item 18. I think, that was 18. Committee reports, we don't have committee reports. Other business, any other business? J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Judge. A lot has been said about transparency tonight, and there were some extraordinary raises given in the county that didn't exactly fall under my definition of transparency. And I would ask that we be provided the names and departments of the individuals who did receive raises above the 3% and the rationale for giving those raises, because I think it's caused some concern within departments where the department supervisor wasn't really able to explain how person A got a higher raise than the rest of the people. So in the interest of transparency, I would ask that the administration provide that information to this court.
That's available.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other business? J.P. Johnson.
Ann Harbison. Butch Pond. Lance Johnson.
Any other business? Any other business? Sheriff?
I need clarification. There's not a chair selected for the jail law enforcement yet, right?
That's correct.
So I guess I would ask those that represent, am I to understand you all, I don't know who you all are.
Who's on the jail committee?
Lance, I think you're on, and
Here-
okay.
here the-
Is it my understanding then I should facilitate for our next meeting, which is going to be a pretty good one, evidently, robust. You want me to get the players involved from the cities and everybody to have that discussion at the meeting about the jail fee ordinance? Is that what I understood? Was that the proposal?
Point of clarification, no, mine was you all have the meeting first and then whatever the information or the conclusion or the summary.
Bring it to the committee.
What I
Then bring
find
it to the
out, I
committee.
would present?
Sure.
Is that the pleasure?
Can we?
I can do that.
J.P.
Can
Lemming?
we?
J.P. Lemming?
Sorry.
Go ahead, J.P. Lemming.
Can we know when your meetings are so we can come to them with the mayors?
Sure. I'll notify the, are you talking about jail law enforcement or the entire court?
Whenever you meet with the mayors.
Notify the entire court? Okay, I'll do that.
J.P. Jenkins.
I just wanted to reiterate that the mayors are waiting to hear from you, and the deputies in county, and the chiefs in the county, they're waiting for a meeting, and that was one of the main concerns that they had, was that they didn't have a seat at the table to talk about this fee and what that would mean. So I don't know if a couple were under the understanding that they were supposed to have a meeting before this came to court. So
That's why I got referred to committee.
Okay, so thank you.
J.P. Bowman.
Judge, after my visit with the people in Springdale, I asked them if they would come to our meeting and so we could all hear their input, because I heard a lot of ideas I'd not thought of before from them, and it really helped my perspective about this entire situation. So I'd really like to have this done, Sheriff, here with the whole group, so we can all hear their input. Is that inappropriate?
I don't care. I'm just trying to get direction. I'm fine. Why don't I facilitate a meeting, pre-meeting, and then I'll invite, I think Springdale's who you're referring to the actual jail law enforcement meeting to discuss those particulars. But then we've got other issues, perhaps on the bond issue. Do you all that have not been seated on the court, would you like for me to have bond counsel, who basically could have explained a lot of that, but he was cut short the meeting that he was here? I can have him there. I can have the man that did our needs assessment study done to explain rationale and justification. you want them at that meeting?
You guys gonna have a long one?
We gotta eat this elephant one bite at a time.
I know.
I don't know that we can digest a year's worth of work in one meeting, sir. I don't know the answer, but.
I know that we've got
What
to
is the
start the
date?
educational
Let me ask,
process.
what is the date that we have set for the jail committee
It's the
meeting?
11th, maybe? I'm not sure.
Do we have that? I don't have it in front of me. February 11th? So and Sheriff, your pleasure, I think the committee, it could be a long meeting. I think having any meetings prior to the committee meeting, then you have the extra work of making sure that you notify media and all this type of thing. So whatever work you can do and then bring to the body may help, I guess, shrink some of the time frame. Otherwise, you're going to have 2 or 3 items on your agenda for, again, brevity. And I think if February 11th is the date, how do you work through, can I meet with mayors and have some of that discussion? Can I get some players? And then what can I share at the meeting? And then whoever those guests are.
I'll have that meeting prior to. I know that we've got to start the educational process.
That's right.
The get-to-know-you process. But we've got multiple issues on that bond issue. One's our radio infrastructure and that part of it. So, I mean, I'm trying to figure out, I tell you what, I'll just run with it, and I'll have whoever there, and you can listen however long you want, and then we'll cut it off and set it for another meeting. But I will for sure have the pre-meeting with our cities and kind of run by what your ordinance looks like, and then if they have any input prior to that meeting.
That'll be good.
I just don't know who my chair is. Normally, I would just address my chair and ask what they want, so.
J.P. Jenkins.
Just one more quick thing. I would love for you to give us a formal presentation or emergency management at some point soon on the radio systems. I found that very intriguing whenever we did our tour of the Washington County Jail, and I feel like the whole court should see what you've got going on there. I know that will be coming, it was tabled, so it's going to be coming before us sooner or later.
Yeah.
So,
we'll just start it at that meeting, and then we'll see how it goes.
Thank
Okay?
you.
All right.
Thank you, Sheriff Helder.
Thank you all.
Any other business? No further business? Quorum Court is closed. Business over.